So hi, I'm Laura. I'm from Commerzbank and I'm a data science chapter lead. So my job is to mentor, coach data scientists and also enable the bank with the AI experience that I have. And we are providing support to use cases that are now created across the bank. And to start with that, we are doing AI already since a fairly long time. So I joined the bank 12 years ago, and what we did was actually fraud prevention models. So we developed models to detect fraud in the mortgage applications, for example, but also when it comes to balance sheet manipulation of large corporates. So that's a long time ago. We also have use cases, of course, for cost reduction. This is important for a bank, but also for every bigger company. And one of the biggest cases that everybody tells us about what AI can bring us, especially when you want to replace humans with the machine. I think it was in 2017 where we built an intensive care model, which detected if a customer which gets into an overdraft of his account will come back and heal on its own or needs help of the bank. So it's a model that helps with like prioritizing the workload in the back and also putting focus on the actual customer that need the help, which led to a lot of efficiency gains in that overall process. We of course have to do marketing because nobody's thinking they need all our bank products. So the next best offer is something that's enforced with AI for a long time already. And also the overall potential like detection of customers is something that we put a lot of like effort and work in the past. And risk quantification, the core business of the bank, taking risk, quantifying them, and then putting them into prices appropriately so that we actually have a business case in the end as a bank. So it's a whole journey, and we started on a very centralized approach. So it was basically a team of quants, data scientists that were able to take on those tasks, working on those projects, building machine learning models and bringing them into the bank. We're now matured a bit. So our AI strategy is basically saying everybody in the bank is allowed to start their own AI journey with a center of competence in the middle, which is basically formed out of the old teams with the experienced experts that have done that for a long time. And overall, it is quite a bit about enablement, right? So you have to ensure that everybody gets the chance to create intuition when it comes to AI, that create an understanding of what's possible, also awareness where the risks are, and with the goal that the potential is in the end leveled of everybody, right? That comes with tools, as you see, centralized services, for example, an LLM service that we have centralized in the bank, which can be used with others. And to give that guidance and also a secure setup to create trustworthy AI components, we of course also have governance, which is not the fanciest and sexiest part of it all, but it's absolutely necessary to fulfill our jobs and to take up the responsibility that we have when it comes to AI. So, getting a little bit deeper look of AI risks, because as I said, risk management is the core activity of a bank. With AI, there are a variety of risks that come with this. Operational risk, I think, is one obvious. So things are not working, breaking. Data privacy issues and security issues, of course, if you are consuming endpoints that are provided by AI companies, for example, you are exchanging data, and it's a big topic, especially for banks, because it's highly sensitive data that we usually have, and we need to make sure that it's safe and, for example, that there's no data outside from the EU, which was a big journey with especially the US, American hyperscalers, which had to learn with us what they actually have to offer so that we can use it. Reputational risks, if you put AI out there to the customer in a call center or on the website, of course, if this chatbot is giving some sort of like an not only awkward but also wrong answer to questions, it's a huge reputational risk. A screenshot, for example, of such an answer could like land into in social media very quickly, and can basically influence the reputation that we have and the opinion that people have of our bank. So there's quite some effort invested in making those secure and reliable. Bias and fairness, that goes a little bit more deeper into personal and human harm that has to be prevented at all. And of course, we do decisions in our bank processes, right? We decide who's getting a credit. We decide who's getting an offer. And of course, we have to make sure that it's fair. Explainability and transparency, I mean, it's always nice to have like a fancy and cool answer. Sometimes you cannot do really much with it, especially in complex processes where a human in the loop has to interpret it, what's the outcome, and then has to like drive conclusions out of them. It can be, or most of the time, it helps if you get a little bit more background. So what data was used, why is the decision pre-processed in that kind, or why is the suggestion that an AI model has tatsächlich actually the way it is. So cybersecurity, as I said, there are endpoints. It's more communication. You have more vendors involved because, especially the large language models, we are not building on our own. So that's one thing. And the regulatory compliance, you guys know the AI Act is heavily discussed. And of course, we need to be compliant with that. And it's a risk to not. But to make it a little bit more on an example visual, here, there is actually stable diffusion. It's the model that creates pictures, and I think that study was already done quite long ago and published by Bloomberg. So the task was create 100 images of or colored photographs of doctors. And I give you 10 seconds to look at this picture and maybe get an idea of what's going wrong here. Huh? Exactly. So the overall distribution of doctors in America is, I think, close to 50-50. I cannot remember correctly if it's like 55 men and 45% women or the other way around, but it doesn't matter because you see in this created images, it's 78% men. It's 7 women and 6 undefined. So you see that we are not only automating bias in a sense where we have to ask our questions, do we actually want that? Because we implement them, we automate them in a sense, right? And it's enforcing it, basically. It's making it more to one direction, which is definitely something that we need to take care of. So the EU Act says it does a lot of those things, but we as a bank, to be honest, it's just one side of the story. The EU Act is preventing humans against any harm, unfairness that's created out of an AI system. So there are unacceptable risks, for example. So those are the risk classifications that come with the EU AI Act. And I will translate it to the bank a little bit later. But unacceptable, for example, is if you take in a sales sales talk with the customer, you take the emotions and calculate basically a manipulation strategy to bring the customer to a sale, to a deal. So that's unacceptable. That's prohibited by the UI Act, and of course, absolutely correct, right? Then we have high risk, where the risk is quite high that harm can happen with a human, and that's on the side where like decisions are basically leading to having access to a resource that's absolutely, should be provided for everybody. For example, a credit decision would lead into that. So if I'm deciding who's getting a credit, that's a fundamental right to be able to have a fair estimation and assessment if I can afford it, of course. But biases and unfairness treatments of specific groups is the most danger there, where the harm can happen, and this is why it's high risk, and this is why the companies, I mean, it's not only banks, right? It's like also all other companies, but in the case of like the credit decision, it's definitely something that we have high requirements that we have to fulfill to make sure that it's not happening. Then we have limited and minimal and no risk. I mean, there are just transparency aspects that need to be handled there. But this is actually the bigger pocket when it comes to banks. I mean, we make those decisions, right? We, of course, are not doing any like prohibited AI. But when we talk about like the cases that I just like told you before, when we think about process automation, right? Like some steps where preparatory tasks are done by an AI, it's basically the bigger bucket. And for us as a bank, although it has not a risk to the human, it has a high risk economically to us, because the damage potential out of like wrong decision, although they are just economically and not like really on the customer level, it can lead to really high damages, and this is why we have to have like an internal system to get a hold on it. And in the bank, we're basically coming up with governance, as a bank does. So if you have never heard of it, so when you talk about risks in bank, you talk about the defense mechanisms that you put in place, and there's always like a first line of defense, right? So the people in the front who can like prevent against those risks. Then you have the second line, which formalizing the standards, writing the governance, and basically give the guardrails and the guidelines to the first line on how to deal with it. And then you have the third line, which is audit. So afterwards, they can come and like point their fingers and say that was so bad and so wrong. So more like of a control afterwards. But overall, there's a lot of responsibility, and this is getting us a little bit more back to the story. How are we doing AI? How are we doing responsible? And how do we want to enable the whole bank? Which is the strategy that gives an overall picture and vision on where we want to go to, with the ability in every department that's providing services that AI can be created and built. Then we have principles where which we need as guidance on how to do that, and to provide everybody who's like new on that journey a little bit of a advisory and suggestions on how to do it. And then we have us. So the Center of Competence of AI, providing support for use cases, which has been turned out this year very, very helpful, because we are involved in talks with vendors. We are involved in very like central strategic programs where a huge infrastructure around automation and AI enforced workflows are created. And we are able then to ask the questions that anyways come up on the journey. We can ask them very early in the time. So the whole bank is basically benefiting of it. Then we have literacy, of course. There was also one article in the EU Act which enforced us that by this year, if we provide AI to our employees, we definitely have to ensure that the literacy is put in place so that they are enabled to have an educated and trustworthy interaction with it. But of course, it will. This is one topic that's also like huge, like growing, because everybody noticed that AI is such an emotional part when it comes to like every employee, like on how to use it, where to use it, do I really want to use it, and between that's the devil's tool, and I trust everything that's coming out of the AI. Like on that scale, we have everything in the bank, right? We are absolutely dependent on the people who are doing all the manual work right now, who are deep in the business processes, to provide us with knowledge, to bring them into the systems, right, and to make them smart. And this is why AI literacy is a big enablement feature of it all. And then we have like the second line where it comes to the risk, as I said, the governance, and also a registry where all AI use cases have to be inventorized. And that's also helping with steering a bit, because as soon as we have some like central changes on services that we offer, or even like governance that we have to adjust, because for example the UI gets like some specifications every month on how to interpret it. So it's really good to have that as a list so we know who to talk to. Yeah, and of course, as I said, law and regulation monitoring is necessary. So overall, it's a big package, right? It's a big package to encounter the complexity of AI. And I think this is something that I want to tell you, that AI is not the one tool that will solve our problems. It's basically a set of tools that have to be implemented wisely. So just to take like an example of agents, if you go with a hammer around in your apartment, you only find nails to put them into the wall. But maybe one wall just needs like a little fix. Maybe one wall just needs a little paint. And maybe another wall needs a complete rebuild, right? And this is the thing. If you walk around with one tool, you only will find one kind of problem. And you have to know the variety of it. And you have to know your problem really well in order to bring that into the right place. So with that, you see me grilling now, and I'm open for questions.
Thank you, Laura, for this encouraging keynote. It feels like you have a lot of fun. And there is a lot to balance, definitely. Are there any questions? We have time for one or two.
Hello. Hi. I'm myself, Pawan. So that was.
Can you get a little closer?
Hello.
Yeah.
So myself, Pawan. So the presentation was really good, and trying to understand how AI. You are making use of AI in your banking domain, right? So it's a Commerzbank. I missed the first part. But I later joined your session. But yeah, I'm trying to understand like how you are realizing the safety aspect. I think mostly you're talking about the safety aspects when we introduce AI into your industries, right? For example, it's like when a customer prompts to you saying that, okay, for example, a chatbot comes into picture, so that the customer will ask something like, okay, why your competitor is better than you? Please explain something like that. So then, so when you don't realize these kind of problems technically at the back end, then the chatbot will definitely going to answer something like that. Okay, I think so and so bank is definitely better because so and so interest rate something they are giving you better or something like that. Then that definitely is not a right way of utilizing the AI when you go for interacting with the customers, right?
Yep.
So in your case also, I see somewhat similar kind of regulations. You're trying to see that, okay, you are fulfilling this kind of European regulations and all those things. So how you are technically realizing it, maybe not in detail, but some overview of your technical approaches when you're doing this? So it would be really helpful. Yeah, thank you.
Really good question, because of course nobody wants to read that our own chatbot, which is basically called Ava, I don't know if you have seen it, is basically saying that Deutsche Bank is better than Commerzbank, right? So it's done with a complete analysis of how we're approaching the problem. Is basically we look what risks, like what group of sayings or statements do we have that we see not only controversial, but that we basically don't want to put out to the customer. And then we do red teaming, trying to get it out of the system, right? And with that red teaming, you find also a way on how to prevent that. So you can basically give the guardrails in the back into the system prompt, and in also lookup tables to provide a whole structure of topics that are not allowed to touch on. But of course, it's a very fine line between make it usable and also make it right? Because if your guardrails are a little bit too narrow, probably Ava will say nothing because she's afraid that she gets the punishment of the red teamers. And also, of course, for the customer, it's not really helpful if with every second question an avatar or a chatbot says, "Sorry, I can't help you." So this is really, that's the line that we have to draw, but it's also what risk management is about, right? So you have to have the transparency of the risk that can happen. You have the measures against them, and then you figure out if the system you put out remains, because it always remains, risks are acceptable and economically useful, so to speak, right? So it's a guardrail system in the back, technically. Yep. We have no time. I talk too much. Sorry. It's always my problem.
Last one.
Thank you for your insights. I suppose you have already implemented GPT, so Commerzbank GPT.
Yeah.
And my question is, in which spheres will bank implement AI according to your mind in the nearest future? Thank you.
Where are we using LLMs?
LLMs, and in which spheres are you going to implement them in the nearest future?
Okay, a chatbot, for example, it's already out there. Ava has an LLM in the back, but also analyzing all kinds of unstructured data that the bank has: contracts, business reports, sales transcripts, or talk transcripts of call centers, feedback that we get over all those platforms, for example, the app, right? Where people are recension, write reviews, basically. So all kind of unstructured data is an absolute huge aspect where we're doing it right now already. And going forward, of course, agents, right? Where we basically put a lot of context in them. We equip them with capabilities. So for example, that in the future, if you ask a avatar, so a digital assistant, so to speak, to do something, that they are actually able to do it, just based off of your typing, your text. So that's one thing, but also workflows, right? If you have to make a decision, you are comparing information that the customer gives us with the documents that he provides as a proof of them. So put them together, right, next to each other, and try to find out if there are plausible in a sense, or if we see something some differences that have to be put a little bit more investigation into.
Thank you so much, Laura. Thank you for listening. We'll continue in a few minutes. In wenigen Minuten geht es hier weiter mit Cyber Intelligence Institut Dennis Kipka und Cybersicherheit und AI. Vielen Dank.
Thank you.